When trying to learn any instrument, it can be super useful to watch someone else get feedback. And that's because you can start to hear things in music that you maybe didn't hear before, but also because you can learn different techniques and ideas that you might need for a variety of different pieces of music. So in today's video, I am continuing the series of reacting to my subscribers' piano playing. And as ever, if you want to send me your piano playing, then you can do that with the link in the description. So let's get into it. First up, we have Andrew, who has been playing for 6 years. Wow, pretty impressive stuff. I have no idea how old Andrew is, but if he's been playing for 6 years already, he must have started when he was very, very young. So there's actually 3 things I would say about this particular piece. The first thing is that with a lot of Chopin and Liszt's piece, you get a lot of expressive runs of notes. And in this case, you get them in kind of their extended form. So this moment where you get a trill, followed by a run of notes. And you also get kind of short snippets like this. And because this piece has a lot of notes that aren't structural notes, so they're not notes that are affecting either the melody or the chords, so they're inherently decorative. You want those notes to sound quite improvisatory, like they're being made up on the spot. And the chances are, when Liszt was writing this piece of music, because he was such a good pianist, that all of this decorative stuff might have been written on the spot. So for example, in the very first line of this piece, you've got a series of kind of melody notes, which all have an acciaccatura just before them playing exactly the same notes. Now, because acciaccaturas are an ornament and they are a decorative idea, the actual melody is just this. But those acciaccaturas, along with the accents that are on every single one of those notes, and the fact that it's marked marcato, mean that essentially Liszt is wanting you to play very grand and big and have a lot of impact with those notes. But more importantly, the actual acciaccatura itself is a less significant note than the note with the accent on it. So it's making sure that all of the ornaments are less significant than the melody notes, and they don't themselves become the melody notes. And the way to physically do that is to try and drop on the second note, so you are kind of going up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And then immediately after that, we have the idea of a tremolo, and once again, it goes from very quiet to very loud. And the idea here is, instead of worrying overly about what the notes are and where they go on the page, instead trying to think about the idea that's trying to be conveyed. And the idea here is that essentially the music is trying to swell and have an impact at the end of it. And then throughout this introduction, where you get acciaccaturas, appoggiaturas, and other decorative notes, you've got to make sure that they sound like additions to the music, and they're just thrown in as a bit of an improvisatory idea. And a good way of practicing that is taking them out all together so that you have all the structural elements. So, for example, with this section here, we have a melody that's kind of in the lower middle kind of area of the piano, and then we have a larger chord surrounding it, so we have some part of it played in the right hand and some part of it played in the left hand. And interestingly, the first note of this melody is a similar idea to the opening of this piece. The interesting thing there is that the fingers that are suggested are a 2 and then a 1. And the reason for that is so that you can get a stronger impact on the second note, like we were trying to do in the first line. But in the second bar of this section, you get this kind of idea, which once again is a more decorative idea, and if you took that out, it wouldn't overly affect the melody line. And so, to me, you can be a little bit more flexible and use rubato to stretch and push and pull the timing with these more improvisatory ideas. It almost wants to sound a little bit throwaway, kind of like, if it wasn't there, it doesn't matter, you're just throwing it in because you can. So yeah, there's a lot of juicy material within this piece to look at and learn and try to interpret. And these suggestions aren't even really that aimed at Andrew because he played it so well. A lot of these things he's already doing. But for anyone else ever interested in learning the piece, those are some initial things that you might want to think about. But well done to Andrew for playing this piece because it is incredibly difficult. Just to give you an idea of how difficult, here is a little bit later in the piece of music. I mean, it's really incredible stuff. It would take me some serious practice in order to get this piece learned. So for someone of Andrew's age, I mean, he's showing us all up. Okay, next up we have Michael. And Michael has been playing for 1 year, but he's had lessons for 7 months, and this was his first recital. Once again, I'm a little bit reluctant to give direct feedback because obviously Michael has already performed it. However, for argument's sake, let's say Michael has another recital coming up where he's playing this piece again. So the first thing I would say is Michael actually has really good control over his fingers, especially when playing those semiquavers or eighth notes in the right hand. Interestingly, throughout that section, in the small sections where there are some awkward finger crossovers, it sounded like Michael tensed up very slightly. And I think if you wanted to make this piece absolutely perfect so your hands just did it automatically, then it's probably worth doing it with a metronome quite slowly and kind of releasing every 4 notes. And then when you add the left hand back in, you'll get that natural lilt to it. And then slowly but surely you can speed that up, having a really strong lilt in the left hand with strong staccatos, and having moments where your right hand will relax and it'll just do it automatically. The other thing I would say is when the melody changes to octaves and it's louder, there's 2 things that I would say. The first one is that you want to follow the contour of the melody in the right hand, very much like when it's in thirds. So just before this, you have this section. And with that particular section, it's easy to kind of build to the top and then fall back down. Whereas when the dynamic changes to forte, so it gets louder, and you've got octaves to play in the right hand, and the staccato, it can be a bit more challenging to go up and down with the contour of the melody. But you don't want every single note to sound the same, because otherwise it can sound a little bit robotic. So it needs to kind of feel like it's building up to the C sharp, where there's an accent, and then it's falling down all the way to that E. And the interesting thing is, the note G sharp to E is legato, so it's not staccato, and it's the only notes that aren't staccato in this whole line. So it's important to make sure that those notes join up the best you can. And the reason for that is because this is the end of the phrase. So it needs to feel like it's kind of tapering off before it starts again. And then you get a responding phrase. But yeah, this is a great piece to learn, and for 7 months of piano lessons and playing for a year, this is very, very well done. The vast majority of players who have been playing for many, many years, and I'm sure a lot of them will testify in the comments, would find this very challenging to learn and master. So being able to do it after a year to this level is very, very good. Okay, next up we have Zimar. Zimar is 14 and started to learn on the keyboard at the age of 5. At the age of about 11 to 12, dropped playing the piano, but now has started to pick it up again and is doing grade 8 ABRSM. Nice, so that was Bach's Prelude from the Prelude and Fugue in B flat, and that is one of the ABRSM grade 8 pieces. But it's a very difficult piece to play, and all of Bach's Preludes and Fugues are known for being challenging to play. What I would say about this is because it's relatively rhythmic, you've kind of got 4 notes in the pattern. It needs to feel very, very in control and almost metronomic in the sense of this left hand needs to sound like it's not being rushed. Although the piece does have to be played quite fast, you can play it fast in a very controlled way. If you can make it sound like it's really in control and like you're relaxed, then as a listener you will also feel like that, and you can also bring the dynamics down quite a lot, which I think is what is needed at the beginning of this piece because it's not supposed to be furious. Also, there would be no metronome mark in the original version of this piece, so if you were to play this as Bach intended, then it would be just marked vivace, which is more of a feeling and a general speed than an exact metronome mark. Also, by bringing the tempo down just ever so slightly in order to concentrate on control, you're able to like push and pull the volume and the speed just a touch in places in order to bring out the chords. For example, in the 4th bar, you have a B flat chord essentially being outlined. Then you get this run of notes. And then you get a C major chord being outlined. So you can kind of use that run of notes to build up the dynamic and then fall down the arpeggios again. And this is actually what makes these preludes and fugues and a lot of Bach pieces quite hard, because you do have to do a lot of interpreting because there's not really much given to you on the page other than the notes. So finding things like chord shapes and when things go high, when things go low, and where there's runs of notes versus arpeggios, these are all things that you can use in order to shape the music and push and pull. So even though it does have to be relatively quick and it can sound pretty impressive if you play it fast, you are much better off focusing on controlling it and giving it shape by thinking about where you want to be loud and quiet and where you want to slow down a little bit to bring something out, or speed up because it wants to sound a bit more like a run of notes. But once again, very, very good playing, and grade 8 is no mean feat. They're all very challenging pieces. Okay, next up we have Caleb, and Caleb is 17 and he's been playing for 4 years, mostly self-taught. I mean, once again, pretty incredible playing. I know that a lot of people are subscribed to my channel are musicians, so obviously I'm going to get a lot of good musicians who are sending me pieces. But this is a particularly strong video for amazing musicians. You definitely don't have to be able to play this well in order to send me a video. So this is Chopin's Etude Opus 25 number 12, and all of Chopin's etudes are very difficult and they focus on specific techniques. And this particular technique is kind of arpeggio based. And you've got to kind of be really accurate when you are jumping up octaves for this particular piece. And for someone that has been mostly self-taught, this is a piece that I would never normally advise attacking until you've done loads and loads of other pieces, because all of Chopin's etudes are pretty tough, and you can build in quite a lot of tension into your hands. However, Caleb has done a very good job at making sure his hands stay relatively relaxed when playing this. As with a lot of Chopin etudes, and I've played a few, out of the ones that I've played, Opus 10 number 1, for example, means that it's almost impossible to not have any tension in your hand. And this piece is likely quite similar, because you are doing a technique that requires you to be quite accurate jumping around the piano for quite a long time. So really it's about tension management and making sure that your hands can keep going as relaxed as possible throughout. So you run up like this, relaxing on the first note and relaxing on the top note. If you build this in slowly with each of the chord shapes as you go through the piece, then your hands will naturally relax, and you'll also get those accents at the bottom and the top. And the way to build in that relaxation is to sort of drop your hands on those notes. So you're thinking down, up, down, up, down, up. It will also help you crescendo through the arpeggio to the top and then kind of diminuendo on the way back down, so you're getting that kind of rise and fall feeling. And it will also make it easier for the listener to stay tuned in to what's happening with the arpeggio, because when you have pieces like this, it can be very easy for it to all kind of blend into one thing and one big cloud of sound. Whereas if you're able to relax on the bottom and the top note where you're giving those accents, you're crescendoing from the bottom to the top, then it can clear away some of that cloud of sound that you might get. But yeah, once again, this is another piece that would take me quite a bit of time to sit down and master. So pretty incredible being able to learn it to that level within that space of time, having only played for 4 years and most of that being self-taught. If you want me to react to your video, then the link is in the description. And as I said before, you don't have to be this good in order to send me your video. I don't want these videos to become too #unrelatable. And if you want to see me react to more of my subscribers' piano playing, then head on through and I will see you there.